Well, I'm not Buddy Martin, so calm down. And no, you don't get Loren Meadows tonight, but you do get two of my favorite people on the planet Earth. We'll introduce them in a minute. We are watching right now as the Tennessee Volunteers battle the Kentucky Wildcats as they're down 68-73. I believe that is correct, boys, right? That is correct. So watch the rest with us. We'll talk about it.
You're correct.
You are correct, sir. We are also going to talk, I believe Dallas Wilson has enrolled early, Francis. Isn't that correct?
Yes, he has. Got all his paperwork clear. He's in school. He'll be in school. Vernell will be in school.
It's a freaking party in school anymore.
Nashawn Montgomery,
Maybe I'm going to register for school. Francis is going to register. We're all going to register for school, and Francis is going to tell us all about that here more. Spring practice is right around the corner. Can you believe it? Basketball, Todd Golden's cleared of all the mess and madness, and now the Gators got a clear road. Franz is going to tell us how good they are, and I'll probably throw in a few bad, unwanted comments here and there. Rob Browne is super smart, so leave us a comment, follow us, like us, all that good stuff, and welcome to the Buddy Martin Show.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Well, welcome to the program, broadcast, internet broadcast, whatever you want to call it, Wayne's World, what somebody said to me during the bowl game. They said, look, it's Wayne's World. I said, party on, Garth. Kentucky Wildcats still holding on to a 5-point lead here at the end of this game. Francis, what's going to happen in this one? Is the Wildcats going to walk away or what?
Well, there's a minute 18 left. They're up by 5, but they just turned the ball over. Kentucky wasn't turning it over, and then all of a sudden here in the second half, they've had 5 of them, all of them critical at late in the game. They were up 11 on Tennessee. They should be up much more than this, but I think that, if it comes down to free throw shooting, Kentucky should win the game. But they just made a foul on, so Tennessee will be shooting free throws, and it's 1-on-1. You never know. The thing about it is 5 points in today's game with a 3-point shot is nothing. You better come into the last minute of the ball game up at least 3 possessions. A 2-possession game is terrible. I was in Chapel Hill in 1974 when North Carolina is down 8 with 18 seconds to go against Duke. And this is before the 3-point shot, because if they'd had a 3-point shot, Carolina would have won the ball game. The thing I always remember about that is Dean Smith in the huddle talking about, gosh, guys, isn't this fun? You're down 8 points with 18 to go, and he's talking about how fun it is. And Mitch Kupchak said after the game, he said, never once did Coach Smith say if. He said, when we do this, we score, and then we do this, and we will win the game. Never was if or maybe or whatever. It was always, we will win the game. And I think that's the difference in the really good teams and that separates good teams from great teams. Great teams never worry about the score. They just get out there and do it and win. Auburn, I think, had a brilliant game the other day against Tennessee. And that was a ball game when Bruce was in his element. I got to tell you what, Bruce was in his element. He had Auburn. Auburn isn't caring. What's the score? Hey, we'll win. Don't worry. And they did. It's one of the greatest things I ever saw was or heard. Dick Vitale, Wake Forest had Tim Duncan. They're up 10 points on North Carolina with 1:10 to go in the game. And Dick Vitale says, there's Wake Forest. They're up 10 points with 1:08 to go in the game, and they think they're going to win. He said, down in that huddle is North Carolina. They're down 10 points with 1:08 to go. They know they're going to win, and they did.
Yeah.
Great teams know they're going to do stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this is what is propelling Auburn this year. I think it's why Florida is so good this year. Is the Gators really, really have bought in and believe. Florida's 18-2 when they're playing and hitting on all cylinders. There isn't a team in the country, not even Auburn, that can beat them.
Well,
same thing can be said about Auburn, though.
With that being said, I want to talk to our resident Auburn expert here, in Rob Browne. By the way, if you don't know who Rob Browne is, you need to, because he's on every morning right here on this channel. Does a great show with myself as his producer, and we talk all SEC sports news and college football and basketball. So check it out right here. Rob, Auburn basketball truly seems to be at unbelievable right now, both offensively and defensively. And it seems that they, I don't know, they seem to adapt to every style of play of everyone that they play with. I was watching them the other night. It just, they seem sort of unstoppable. Are they that good?
I don't know how good they are. They don't match up well against teams that are really tall and that have size. That's where they tend to struggle. Of course, they're 18-1. They did go on the road and lose at Duke, 84-78 in a true road game earlier this season. But I mean, I agree with Franz. You look at Florida's big, tall lineup. That'll be a problem for Auburn when they play them. But what Auburn's really good at doing is, correct, they adapt very well, but they find excuses to win. And if they have to slow the game down to get the win, they're okay with that. They got to speed it up. They can do that. Janai Broome has been hurt twice this year. He's missed several games. So Auburn's won without him. The road games in the SEC have been really tough, but they are for everybody. But look at this Kentucky. I'm looking at the standings. You go down and you look at Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Kentucky. And so Kentucky's down there 3-3 in the conference, 14-5 overall. And they were in the top 10 Saturday when Vanderbilt beat them. There's a lot of rear view window voting that goes on. There are new powers in the SEC. Florida certainly, look, you've got Arkansas's won one. Florida's won 2 national championships. They did it back to back. And then you got Kentucky. Kentucky deserves the respect, but no one should, bow to them or kneel to them. When everybody else in the SEC decided basketball was important, look what's happened. Kentucky's not dominating anymore. And that's not going to change. They're up there. They likely will get the win tonight in Knoxville. But Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Missouri, Vanderbilt. And find me a team, guys, that plays harder for their coach than A&M for Buzz Williams. Franz, how good a coach is Buzz Williams? I mean, I think he's a great coach.
You hate to think what would happen if Buzz ever gets a lot of talent.
I know.
He gets guys that, for the most part, nobody else wants. and he makes them play hard for him.
Yeah.
But he's able. Here's his secret, though, Rob. He's able to find guys, even though these are guys that may not be have been as heavily recruited. He finds guys that have that fit his system. That he may be looking for a guy who's a left-handed shooter from the corner that he can use in certain situations, and he'll find that, and he'll make it all work. That's an impressive characteristic of a coach, that you don't have to have 5 high school All-Americans to win. What you find is 5 guys who fit your system
Yes.
and can do it at a high level. But first and foremost, they have to be able to defend, because if you're going to play one of Buzz's teams, you're going to be in a rock fight first and foremost.
Yeah.
And you better have more rocks than they do.
Well, if you think about rock fight type coaches, Buzz Williams, Chris Beard. Remember that game last week in Oxford? Ole Miss is up by 8 with 2 minutes left. A&M just won't go away. They're like that fly that keeps getting on the television screen. You get back in the bed, and he gets right back on there. You shoo him away. He comes back. They are the hardest playing team in the SEC. Now, I look at Dennis Gates at Missouri. Last year, weren't they 0-18? And they come back.
They were really bad last year.
Yeah, they were 0-18 in the league. You got to be really bad. And look at them this year. They're sitting here with a record of 16-4, 5-2 in the SEC.
They're another team. They're another team
Yeah.
that Dennis has found 5 guys who fit his system.
Yeah.
And most of them are transfers in the starting lineup. I think Tamar Bates isn't, but most of the other guys are transfers. Mark Mitchell is. I know that the big kid out Pierce outside. He's a transfer, but they loaded up on transfers. But he found guys that fit his system, and it's easier to win with transfers in basketball than it is in football, because in basketball you can get them out there and they'll play from can to can't in the summertime games every day. And you can't do that in football. You can't practice blocking in football. You can't practice tackling in football. You only get a certain number of practices. And it's always interesting, isn't it, Rob? Isn't it, Brenden, that you see in September, you see the teams that didn't emphasize tackling very much because they're the teams that are getting beat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fundamentals are everything in basketball. And last year, friends, you and I and Brenden had these discussions with a lot of guests. Oh, this is the best the SEC's ever been. Got to the NCAA tournament. It didn't pan out that way. Right now, and we're going to have a serious discussion tomorrow morning on the show, our 9 a.m. Eastern show, Sidelines. We've got Ron Slay from SEC Network. One of our interns, Oakley McFerrin, will be on with us. Coach John Brady, who took a team to the Final Four. We'll have Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net, and we'll also have Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. So a lot of basketball. So
John Brady, who his older brother Don and I were buddies in Macomb, Mississippi, and John was 16-0 as a 12-year-old pitcher in the Macomb Little League. I can tell you stories about him.
I tell you what, it is cool too to hear him. All these coaches and people criticizing coaches. I said, well, John, what were your first 3 or 4 years like as a coach? He goes, I made $15,000 a year, and it's tough. And we talked about it every day. The Gators, this team, let's talk about getting the monkey off his back for Todd Golden, because that's good. And I think the team is that's a weight lifted off their shoulders if it's talked about at all. But Florida, what about the big guy, Hangloten? Is he going to come back? You talked about that yesterday.
I believe that he's going to, and I understand his apprehension. It's one thing to go and practice because your teammates are not going to hammer you.
Yeah.
But you get into a big ball game, you've had a serious injury like that, and when you go up, nobody's going to show mercy on you. They don't care that you had a serious injury that was almost life-threatening the way it was. If they had not been so close to the hospital, and the people at Vanderbilt were just absolutely so incredible, he might have lost his life last year when he got injured, when he broke his leg against
It's a compound
Auburn.
fracture, correct?
It was a compound fracture.
Blood everywhere. Yeah.
Blood everywhere, everything. And this is a young man that could have lost his life. Instead, he makes it through. And I understand the apprehension. I mean, my gosh, I'm struggling with the idea of swinging a golf club again. And just because my shoulder hurts a little bit, I didn't have a compound fracture.
Yeah. Well, you think about, last year, tournament time, this year, right now, friends, give me the outside of the SEC. The ACC, it's completely different now because the SEC has happened to the ACC. Then, you mentioned to me the other day, look at these 5 coaches in the last couple of years that have left. Roy Williams, Coach K, Jim Larinaga, Jim Boeheim, Tony Bennett at Virginia. That's 5. I mean, Boeheim has the national title. Tony Bennett, a national championship. Coach K, multiple. Roy Williams, multiple. And Jim Larinaga, one of the best guys for coaching, starting 4 guards I've ever seen. I mean, that's going to take some time to absorb.
Notre Dame lost a long-time coach.
John Bray.
You could just go down the list of guys. Rick Pitino, only just about 4 or 5 years ago, was the head coach at Louisville.
Yeah.
On and on and on. Virginia Tech's coach is now coaching at Vanderbilt, and he was a really good basketball coach. So you see this stuff, and you're right, Rob. People are coming to the SEC, and the SEC has put the money into it. We got the crowds into it now. Look at Florida. Florida sold out Stetson. That, even 2 or 3 years ago, Brenden can tell you, you could, if Stetson had come to town, there were parts of the O-Dome you could have taken a shotgun and unloaded, unloaded the whole magazine and never hit anybody.
Yeah.
Well, that is hard to believe. I mean, I'm kind of shocked. I still think the SEC is a great conference, but is the Big East the best basketball conference in America in terms of smart guard play?
And by the way, Kentucky Wildcats wrap up the win 78-73 final against the Volunteers. Sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
What the Vols are now, that's going to put Tennessee
their 4th conference loss.
Yeah,
4th.
4-4. And they were number 1. That we better be careful about that. I think Auburn and Florida, that game is going to be the Super Bowl of the human race. That is going to be a big, big game. And it's going to be tough for Auburn because it's at home. I always say you're most likely to get mugged in your own driveway. I was very concerned Auburn would lose to Tennessee because you had game day there in the morning and you had to wait till 7:30 at night to play. You like to get the games over as early as possible because there's a lot of things you can be worried about. But friends, basketball, and Brenden and I and everybody watching want to know this. Is the SEC better than the Big East this year? Or is it standalone?
The SEC is definitely better than the Big East.
Because UConn's down.
Even though they've lost games, UConn's still the best team in that league.
Yeah.
And Marquette will do what they do all the time, which is they'll get to the second game or the third game in the NCAA tournament, and then they'll, decide that it's time to immigrate to Manila and become the folders. That's just the way it is. Creighton, if you let Creighton shoot five 3-pointers every 2 minutes, they're going to beat you. If you run them off the 3-point line, they're not. But they've got to launch 35, 40 3-pointers to beat you, even though they got the Kalkenbrenner guy who's a terrific big guy. But they have one big and they run 4 guards off of him. So the big St. John's probably is going to wind up being the best team in the league, and it shouldn't surprise anybody because look who's coaching them.
Yeah.
Good old SEC guy himself, Rick Pitino.
Yeah. I mean, I think his career's been all over the place, but God, and of course, you watch historically, Big East basketball was it was the standard for a long time, kind of what the SEC has been in football, and the SEC does it in baseball, now in basketball, and we're already doing it in football. But friends, North Carolina, look at them. Is Hubert Davis not a great coach, or is it just they're not getting the players they are? Because look at Florida's roster. You look at these rosters of these SEC schools, these kids are staying in the deep South. And if they keep doing that, it's going to be harder for Carolina. Duke is the University of New Jersey at Durham, but it's going to be fun to watch.
I think
that's your line, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I
give friends credit.
I call them Miami is the University of New York at Coral Gables, and Duke is the University of New Jersey at Durham.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that we're looking at right now. When you see how things have worked out, how basketball has changed. Carolina used to get the cream of the crop. Duke is still recruiting very, very well, but Carolina's recruiting has fallen off. Hubert Davis, I think, is a great X and O guy, but he is not the recruiter that Roy Williams was. No. And Roy wasn't the recruiter that Dean was. These guys set a standard, and the sad part about it is Hubert Davis is a very good basketball coach who's probably going to get fired because he didn't live up to a certain standard. It's just like the guys who follow, this is where the problem is at Kentucky. I had a conversation with John Calipari going back about 12, 13 years ago, and he asked me what I thought about him at Kentucky. I said, you're going to be fine, John, except one basic thing. You're going to have to figure out that at Kentucky, you're just another coach until you've won 4. Because Adolph Rupp has been dead for 50 years, but Adolph Rupp is still the standard that everybody's held to.
Yeah.
You had that problem with Alabama football until Saban came along and broke that mold. Everybody was just another coach. Even Gene Stallings, who won a national championship, played for Bear Bryant when they were at Texas A&M, revered Coach Bryant, and people loved him. But he was just another coach because he did not have the multiple championships. And along comes Nick, and Nick sets a new standard. But you got to do that. Buddy can attest to that. He's been around to watch people who follow legends, and they crumble under the pressure, Buddy.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. I've been enjoying your conversation about basketball. I've always been a closet Duke fan. People love to hate on Duke. I always loved him. And I think Cooper Flagg is a great player. I've enjoyed watching him this year so far.
He is good.
They're going to be one of the Final Four teams, I'm pretty sure. But in terms of your iconic coaches, let's be honest, it's just about impossible anymore to become that guy. The Nick Sabans of the world, we won't see that again. We just aren't going to see those kind of coaches and those kind of We don't even see the dynasties that we used to see. We're seeing it divided up now, and all the research. I heard a story today again about this shows that the money's split up so many different ways now that people aren't spending. Like Georgia and Alabama, there was a piece today on Five Bomb Show. Georgia and Alabama are not spending what they would think they'd spend, and they think they can get it on their because they're who they are. The Nick Saban discount doesn't apply anymore. Where you go there and you play for 2-3 years and you get out, you get a nice contract, you're set. Now it's like everybody's got to have to pay. That's why you're seeing the Nebraskas of the world step up all of a sudden and picking up some of these top players. So it costs money. I don't know if the system will ever allow us to have a team or a coach like we've seen in the past. And on one hand, that's good, I guess, because it gives a chance to spread the wealth. On the other hand, it's too bad because we have seen the heyday of sports in terms of college, in terms of football, and in terms of basketball. And I mean, before that, of course, we saw John Wooden. That's a whole different deal. So it's a different game today. A little hard to understand exactly who gets the juice, who gets the power, who gets the players. But definitely it's changed, and we know that because of what we saw in the football playoffs and how the Big Ten has dominated it for 2 years. So it's a different landscape out there all the way around. And yeah, Rupp and Bryant will always be the iconic figures, and I just don't think we'll see those kind of coaches anymore.
I don't disagree with you, but the Big Ten, 2 national championships or 2.5 in the last 35 years. SEC is not going away, but what the SEC better be careful of is burnout on NIL. And Ohio State is spending a lot of money on NIL, but it's for football and basketball, whatever. But I was talking to Brenden before the show tonight. The House settlement, I think the judge, isn't he supposed to make a final ruling in April? And you're going to start seeing if it goes in favor of House, then you're probably going to see a lot of NIL collectives just disappear because they'll say, well, we're going to get that $21 million we got to pay out every year to athletes, and it's broken down football, basketball, whatever. And watch out for Title IX lawsuits coming in there. They've never lost, and they've gone to court. So we're in a very precarious situation right now. We don't know where we're going to go, but NIL will just eat itself alive because how many times can you go back to your donors? You're asking them for brick and mortar. You're asking them for the new scoreboard or whatever. And then NIL, you go 9-3 a couple of years in a row. They're going to go, why are we paying for this? I give you money for a building. It's there forever. I give you money for a 19-year-old kid. He's there for a semester and he's gone with my money.
I had a conversation with. Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead, buddy.
I just want to say you say they only won 2, but they won the last 2.
I know. Recency bias. Yeah, correct.
And and so consequently we see that, and we see how come they're winning and we're not. And they start doing the math, and it's not hard to figure who's spending the money. By the way, for the person, Danny Tankersley, talked about the Gatorade hat. Thank you very much. Rob is attempting to put together. We're trying to get a hold of a few to sell. I believe, Brenden, we'll have those sometime in the near future. But they're really hard to get, and they're not cheap, just so you know. But thank you for the compliment on the hat.
It's a badass hat, buddy. Worn by a badass, a journalistic badass.
And a badass organization.
That's right. I love it.
I had a conversation with Scott Strickland after the Georgia game back on Saturday. And I asked him, I said, is the SEC going to expand to 105 scholarships like everybody else in the country? And he said, no, we're going to stick with it. And I'm going to paraphrase him here. And he said, we don't know what the judge is going to rule. You got a lot of schools that are making these wholesale changes prior to the judge's ruling. And this judge could slam the congressional deal, just throw it out the window. And this is not a one lawsuit deal. There are several lawsuits lined up. So I'm not sure how quickly they're going to be able to implement 105 scholarships and 35 for baseball and on and on and on like this. I don't know how quickly they're going to be able to do it. For one thing, I think the women are going to have their say in this too, and which is, okay, we've conceded football to you because football pays the freight, but we're not going to concede on all the other issues without us getting an equal share. That pie is going to be divided more ways than we can imagine when all is said and done. It's just my belief of that. So I think the SEC is playing it very cautiously, but in a right way. I think Greg Sankey is going to be the smartest guy in any room he's in, and he's going to figure this thing out. But he's not letting the SEC get overextended like some of these other conferences are, because one judge and one stroke of the pen, and all of a sudden you're back to square one.
Well, if you think about this House settlement, if it doesn't go the way a lot of people think it is, what then we got a whole nother set of circumstances. But Title IX is going to push its way in there, and that's just where it is. And I'm hearing that Colorado is about to fold up their NIL collective. So who else is going to do it?
Well, follow suit. I'm sorry, guys. We've been getting everybody in the show tonight. We welcome Loren Meadows in from on assignment. Gainesville. Well, no, I didn't know we were Gainesville, but you were at a very special meeting tonight. I don't know if we're able to talk about that, but welcome to your Tuesday show, Loren.
Oh no, I just got back from the women's basketball NIL event where each girl was given $2,500, I believe, of NIL opportunities. And it was a nice event put on by Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We had Freddie on last week, kind of explaining just trying to get, not just women's basketball, but the NIL, the collectives as a whole, with the work that they're doing with Florida Victorious, just getting the sports out, understanding that it takes a village in this thing, whereas people think it's just one big donor. If we could get, 1 million small donors for the sports, not just women's basketball, but, we still have football in play, basketball, and some of those things. But a really nice event put on by some great people. There were several sponsors. They invited members of the media to come in and speak to the girls, and they showed the Unlaced video that has been put together by the women's basketball team that kind of dives into the women's lives on a personal level. And it was just a nice event. So look for Florida Victorious and Spurs to be involved, and maybe other events like that. I know softball is having an event on the first, where it's you dine on the field at Katie Cecil Presley Stadium. Kind of the same thing. They have a silent auction and different things like that going on. So, just as a whole, when you look at this thing, and I know you guys were kind of talking about that, so it segues into that, just doing things that are not just, hey, pay to play, but offering these athletes an opportunity to put themselves out there, meet the fans, but also grow the Florida Victorious Collective, or the NIL, and just get more eyes on it and more people involved.
Well, it's interesting, Loren, because we've been talking about I kind of good segue, because we were just talking about not the investigation. First of all, the Todd Golden investigation was cleared. I had two things on my mind at once.
Sure.
And Rob was just discussing how collectives and NILs and things like that could be in jeopardy. The current status of what's going on right now, especially with the ruling coming down in April. What is your take on all of that? Because I know you're very close to at least the Florida Collective and what's going on there. What do you think?
Well, I think, like Rob mentioned, the House ruling that's going to come down, as well as the revenue sharing that's going to be allowed, where they're able to, now the universities can kind of control some of that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but you're also starting to see, and it's not political; it's just a fact. A little bit more government oversight in some different areas, so we don't know where that could turn to as well. So it's going to be interesting. I think we've all talked to the model that we see right now. Nobody really thinks that's sustainable. So, I heard Rob mention that Colorado is dissolving theirs. Will you start to see disillusions of collectives, or will there be some type of regulation put in place that limits the amount of money? Is there a quote unquote cap on the teams? You got 15 players, you can only spend this much with the revenue sharing. What is it going to be? But I think nobody I think thought this is what it's going to be when we do this. None of us that thought, hey, the kids should be getting paid, should be able to get a little something, take Susie Q out on a date, that kind of thing. We never saw it going to this level where it's 20-30 million dollar payrolls, so to speak. So I think, for the game to sustain itself from a popularity standpoint, and for people to believe in this thing that we call interscholastic athletics, it's going to have to come back to the traditional model, but obviously keep some things in place where guys can and girls can monetize themselves, just based on their talents, and not just athletics, but just the ability to get people watching. Even though they may dissolve TikTok, you still got the Instagram, you still got there's ways to YouTube to put yourself out there. And when it's in that case, it's hard to tell a kid that they can't monetize themselves based on those platforms.
France?
They're going to, kids are going to be able to have the ability to monetize. But here's the thing that's going to happen is we're going to have a new organization. The NCAA, I guarantee you, is not long for life anymore. And these latest rulings are just proving why, because the NCAA, every time the NCAA makes a deal with something, it goes to court and they lose. You're going to have to start a brand new organization with new rules and new guidelines. Kids should be able to take advantage. I should be, if I'm the stud tight end in my dreams, at the University of Florida, and the local Toyota dealership or Audi dealership wants me to do a commercial, I should be able to go down there and do a commercial and say, well, Loren Meadows came by yesterday and paid cash for a brand new Audi A8. It's only $151,000, but he just wrote a check for it. That's because he's
no. Laurie would have the cash. She had the cash.
Yeah, right.
But this is my point: is that a kid should be able to go out there and get money that way, but you can't be giving away money supposedly for NIL. And nobody shows up for anything. There's none of these things. And it's just turned into a money giveaway, buying somebody. Florida used to have an assistant track coach here who was an assistant track coach for the Olympics and everything like this. And I'll never forget, he was in Highland Springs, North Carolina. And this kid started talking about, well, North Carolina State's offered me this much money to come down there. He was very open about it. And the coach said, Coach Johnson said, we were freed from slavery more than 100 years ago. He says, you take that money and you have gone back into slavery because somebody owns you now. And this is the big fear of the way where we're going now, and why I have no problem with guys getting money, but who are you getting it from? Why are you getting it? How are you getting it? If there's no accountability, somebody owns you. And if you're owned, bad things can happen.
Yeah, well, you know what? We're going to be talking about this forever. I've just made a promise to myself I'm not going to deep dive in this too often, because it's way above my pay grade. I'd like to go back to learning how to enjoy the sport that I cover more,
Mm-hmm.
especially this year in basketball with the team that they've got, which has been remarkable what they've done. And now with the clear sailing they've got apparently after this Title IX suit's been dropped. This has got a chance to be a magical year for Gator fans with basketball. I'd like to get a piece of that as a fan, be able to enjoy that. And I think we're in for a really good year where Florida's going to have a chance to make one of the 12 playoff spots. Got the quarterback you've been wanting for a long time, and DJ Lagway, and goes a good squad. Now they got a defensive coordinator. We think that hopefully he'll be the guy that we think he would be from Jacksonville State, Sanseri. And I think things are looking fairly good at this point in time. The problem is you get too much of a good thing, and you have unintended consequences where things happen that aren't supposed to. And in giving the power to the players, which they deserve to have some, there's no question about that. They need to have some. Taking it back, there's still a lack of governance, which we're all complaining about. But let's not let it spoil what we like to do, which is to celebrate the joy of college sports, particularly in Florida, where they have lots of good sports to celebrate. And I just want to bring it back to that level again and say, let's don't lose sight of what we're trying to do here.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, if you think at I mean, I agree, buddy. I mean, I think and I think we've said it enough on this show that once all this that's going on around, and you could say you don't, but like you said, buddy, I mean, it's still, we're in the middle of a magical season, and, it's still basketball at the end of the day. You got to put the ball in the hole. It's still football at the end of the day, 100 yards, 53 in the third, and the game is still in a good shape. When you talking about the game, and I agree with you. I think that, if we continue to harp on that on a consistent basis, like I was, and I didn't meant to text Rob, but I mean, I got to see him throw, toilet paper to Oaks this weekend. I mean, just the beautiful things that happen in sport.
Rolling on Toomer's corner.
Yes, roll it. Yes. So I was on Toomer's corner watching them roll Toomer's corner, roll the Oaks. And obviously we know the story behind, I guess those are the new Oaks from the poisoning, which when I was there in the spring, they were not mature enough to toilet paper yet. So they are officially mature enough to toilet paper. And that was pretty cool. So you have all those things that come in with sports. And I agree, buddy. I mean, it's going to be a fun year, particularly for Gator fans.
Well, I'm putting this guy's picture up. He's now on campus, signed in. Dallas is now officially Dallas Wilson. I thought we all knew his name. My God, I've been talking about where he's been at for like I don't know how long. Yes, Dallas Wilson is going to be a Gator. Is enrolled.
He's cleared.
He's cleared. He's there, but he's done. He's in class, so he's early enrollee. Thoughts, Loren?
Always good if you can get in and participate in spring ball. You get a leg up. Somebody that obviously any 5-star, I mean, they got 3 5-star receivers. Anytime you can get a guy in the fold, learning the rigors of college football, learning the playbook, getting part of what Billy Napier calls the identity phase. Many of us just off-season workouts, getting in the weight room, getting acclimated, getting 3 hots in a cot, that make those guys bigger, faster, and stronger. And I mean, this is a guy that I think with the losses at receiver that they're going to depend on. And so being able to get him in early in the spring is huge.
Yeah.
I think Florida is going to be more athletic at wide receiver than they've been in a long time. They got a lot of guys who've got the speed, but now they've got the athleticism too. You're going to see these athletic catches that we watch on TV, and we see some guy getting up there between 2 guys and coming down with the ball and stuff like that. We know we've had guys that can get wide open, but we need that guy that can go up there and fight for the football. And we've got guys coming in here now who I think can get that job done, who can who can go fight for the football, bring it down. And that's going to add another dimension to this Florida offense. And as you've said, Loren, 100 times, offense has never been the problem during the Billy Napier years. They can play, they can move the football. Their problem has been getting stopped so they get the ball back enough times. And I think they're going to be able to do that now.
I want to say that the one thing I thought about, and I want you to get your take on this, particularly Loren. It seems as though they got a formula there in Gainesville. If you give them experienced wide receivers, that they can continue to pick off the top players in the portal like they've done, it seems as though those players really mature when they get to Florida and they get the good coaching. It seems like they're always going to have one or two guys. I love their young players this year. I love but those experienced players we've had like DK, the stuff that Billy gets in there and learns how to run the system, I think is a really key to Florida's offense.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a guy. I mean, Billy Gonzalez. I mean, we've talked about it a million times. You and I, buddy. I think the first time we met, we marveled at just his ability to take guys, and he truly is a coach that you can pretty much give him anybody, and they're going to get better. I mean, guys like Van Jefferson were good, but they got better under Billy Gonzalez. Trayvon Grimes got better under Billy Gonzalez. I mean, Kadarius Toney, a quarterback and kind of a gimmick guy, became a first-round draft pick under Billy Gonzalez. And I mean, you look at a guy like Ricky Pearsall and then Chimera DK and Elijah Badger this year. I was talking to David Aronoff, who we all know is an avid listener to the show, and he asked me today, he said, what makes Billy Gonzalez so good? And I said, there is a messaging that comes with being a position coach, where you are continuously harping on the little things and how the little things allow you to do the big things, make the big catches, be open at big times. And he teaches blocking better than any receiver coach in the country. So therefore, those runs, you love Jaden Bob, buddy, those are those runs that get sprung because he makes it essential for guys to block, but not only to block, but to block the right way. Like Francis said, you are on the outside shoulder blocking this guy, not the inside shoulder, the outside shoulder. And I mean, I think if you take guys like Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III, and you throw them in there with Aiden Mizell and Trey Wilson, with a guy like Billy Gonzalez, who's been everywhere and coached some of the greatest, you give him athletes, and the world is his oyster because he is just that good. He knows what it takes to be a dominant receiver, and it just turns them out. I mean, you saw it when you wrote the book with Urban, I'm sure, in full view, but we just have seen it over and over for the last 20 years, and I think it's going to continue.
And people talk about, I want to jump in here real fast and talk about Titan, but people talk about details and attention to details. The one that was the most fanatical about that, Steve Spurrier, was fanatical about his receivers, hitting their landmarks, being where they're supposed to be. For all the razzle-dazzle he gets credit for, it was the fundamentals of receiving. Like you said, Gonzalez's receivers, they got to block or they don't play. Those little things, it's what makes it all work. Let's take a minute to tell you about Titan MRI and Imaging. They are known quite well in the industry now. Acquired high-field MRI. Joe Colorio started high-field MRI in 1997. Now he's back. Titan MRI and Imaging now has 3 locations, 2 in Gainesville with its Park Avenue location, and now Millennium Center and one in Lake City serving all of Columbia County, also in Valdosta, Georgia. Soon to come to Ocala. They'll have one there as well. Titan MRI and Imaging offers the same great customer service. Imaging accepts insurance now through their convenient self-pay options. And check them out if you need MRI, CAT scan, X-rays, ultrasounds, easy scheduling with lots of options. Titan MRI Imaging. Check them out.
Just on a side note, how do the Lakers give up 43 points to Tyrone Maxey? Are you serious now? I just happen to look at my. I mean, on another. I'm frustrated with my Lakers, but that's another point.
You have
Anyway,
to talk to somebody who actually watches the NBA.
Well, yeah. Well, they gave up 43 points to Tyrese Maxey. Are you? I mean, come on. Okay, go ahead. Anyway,
sorry,
I got distracted. I'm sorry.
Francis, I know you're withholding your enthusiasm a bit because we have a little break in the action, as they say in basketball. But who knows how good this team can be? Remember, they're off to the greatest start in the history of college Florida basketball. They won 18 games, as you pointed out to me last night. They can still lose 5 or 6 and end up with 25 wins. I think we all want to see how good this team can become. And with the strength they've got and the talent level they got, and now if Hangloden does, in fact, come back and earn his redshirt year, I keep pointing out, those guys got a sideline that looks like Manhattan with those big guys, Francis. They can play in all positions.
Well, think about this, too. If everybody comes back, and from what I'm told they will, all the big guys, and Hadlogton's back next year, and then you got Oliver Ryu, who is taking a red shirt this year, and they really believe he's going to be a player.
Francis, talk about him. This guy's amazing. How tall is he, Francis?
He's 7'9". He is. The other day, it was kind of funny because the Georgia game, they're running off the court to go into the locker room, and Micah goes in there with them. And Micah's running next to Big Ollie. And Mike, it's like looking at a 6'8" guy going to the locker room with your 5'11" point guard. I mean, there's an 8-inch difference in size. And Ollie's only 19 years old. He doesn't even shave yet. And as Dean Smith once pointed out to me, they're still growing if they aren't shaving. So he could get taller still. Somebody asked why they redshirted him. They redshirted him because he does not have the fundamentals. He hadn't been playing basketball that long, and he is making tremendous strides in the basics of the game, the fundamentals, understanding teammates, where the spacing, all this stuff. I will tell you something, though. I have a business partner whose youngest son was playing at Montverde last year with the Montverde JVs, and they went over to IMG, and he said one of the most amazing things he ever saw. Ollie takes the ball up here, reaches over his head and dunks, and his feet never left the floor.
Oh, boy.
Just
that kind of height.
You cannot teach tall, and Florida's going to be really tall. Florida's very tall as it is, and here's why Micah, if he decides to play, why that'll be important. It gives you 25 fouls in the paint.
Yeah.
So you can even get against the whistle-happy Pat Adams crew.
Yeah.
and
Russ Shells.
Shells is terrific. You won't find a coach in the league that won't beg for Shells to call your game. And here's the reason why, Rob. With Shells, they understand the game will be called the same the last 5 minutes as it is the first 5 minutes. And everything in between. And coaches will say, if you'll set the tone, it's up to us to adapt. And Shells, they love Shells for that. What they can't stand is a guy like Ron Groover or a guy like Joe Lindsay. Joe Lindsay, my gosh, he's liable to change. He's liable to change horses 10 times in the same stream.
All right. I know that I'm not driving the show tonight, and that Rob has done a great job of kicking it off with Brenden. And since both Loren and I sort of stiffed you guys earlier tonight, Francis has stepped in and adequately done it. I just want to get this in before we talk about Melvin Law. Think about it. Give me a brief comment. I'm thinking about writing something about it. Do you realize the best quarterback in the land is going to be a junior and has hardly played? Was going to Texas the right thing for Arch Manning? You stop and think about it. He could have gotten millions to do other things. So the question becomes is, what's the right thing to do? It seems on the surface like that's the right thing to do, but has he cost himself a lot of money? And was it a wise decision? Around the horn real fast, 25 seconds for each guy.
Repeat the question again. I'm sorry.
The question is Arch Manning. He's going to be a junior back at Texas. He's hardly played in 2 seasons. Was going to Texas the right thing for him?
Oh, I think it was. I mean, if you look at Sarkisian and
but what do you got to show for it after 2 years?
Well, but he's getting ready to play, and that's all he needs.
He's ready to, but he's not.
Yeah, but I mean, you asked. I think it was a good decision. I think he is in a good place with what I saw in Austin and what they have and what they've been able to build there. I think they're going to protect him. I think they're going to run a dynamic offense around him. Got a really good group of young receivers. I think it was a good move. I mean, why not? You know, and I mean, you only need a couple years. I think it was a good move for him.
Betting on the come, Rob. Betting on the come. What if it's not? What if you wasted all that time?
I think you made a great decision because that was his decision. I mean, a lot of people wanted him to go to Ole Miss or Tennessee or somewhere else, but he gets to make that decision. And Steve Sarkisian is one of the best guys at developing quarterbacks and running an offense there is. He's got NFL experience. He's got Saban experience. And he took that blueprint to Austin, Texas with him. And the Manning genes are strong. I mean, if you look around, there's really nothing else like them. And this kid mentally is ready to go. Definitely, I think he made the best decision because they're in the hunt. Since he's been there, they've been in the hunt every year.
I wouldn't know about Manning. I only have Levi. Okay, France, you can put a bow on it. And looking back, will they think it's the right decision, or maybe they should have done something else?
I think it was the right decision to go someplace other than Ole Miss. Is it the right decision to have gone to Texas? We'll find out about that. But the pressure to be a Manning at Ole Miss, particularly they had a star quarterback who was ready to go. And I think one of the worst things to be is a legacy quarterback and be the backup, because the first thing that happens is the first mistake that's made, they want you in the ball game. And if you don't deliver, it's going to be, oh, you're a flop. The pressure is enormous. So I think he made the right decision to go someplace other than Ole Miss, but whether Texas is, I don't know.
Here's a little stat for you. I read this as I was going on the air tonight. Guess how much Texas grossed this year in football?
162 million.
About 323 million.
Is that all?
Yeah, gross.
I thought they had money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's amazing. I think they made a net profit of $6 million.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you right now, they got a nice setup out there. If you look at them, and I mean, obviously, I love my Gators. You can see, but I mean, Florida got to get their stuff together. For real.
You're preaching to the choir. I've loved Texas since I worked there in the 60s.
Yeah.
Spent time out there. I love Darryl Worrell. I love what they were doing then. I think they were one of my favorite schools. So.
Only God has more money than the Longhorns.
I walked through that museum, and on the way to the press box and got a complex. I was like, this is horrible. Before the game even started, I was like, oh my God.
$323 million. I mean, last year, Texas's total budget for athletics was about 240 or 250 million.
I just read it today on Twitter. I'm assuming it was correct. You never know.
Yeah.
I want to say it was more than that. It may have been 336. But I know the net profit they showed out of that was $6 million. So it's amazing how much money out there. Pretty soon, like they say, you throw these millions around, pretty soon people going to think it's like real money.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, great job tonight. Go ahead, France. Go ahead,
Texas, they have running into a deficit or they need a player. They just call old Bubba out in Waxahachie and say, "Go out in the backyard, punch a new well for us, boy."
Waxahachie on Trinity Bay.
We need that wide receiver.
Also go down to over there in Texas A&M and do the same thing. All right, guys, great job. I want to tell you about Red Star Medical Research. Terrific job tonight, folks. Tomorrow night we're going to have our other team on tomorrow night. We'll have Allie and the gang. Then thanks, guys. We'll talk to you on Thursday night. I want to tell you about Red Star for lots of reasons. Number one, they're a terrific company, Superior Medical Research Facility. They're right there in Ocala, my hometown. And they do it right. And they do it right from every standpoint. They have a heart for you and for me in terms of getting our health right. And they take a stand in the community. They want you to come in if you can and take part in their clinical trials. Clinical trials are very important. That's how the data gets from us to the companies that need it in order to give us the medications that we need in our lifetime. And reputation like Red Star, people know they do it the right way. Run by two friends of mine, Mary Brantley, the wife of Scott Brantley, and of course my good friends Joey and Joe have been doing this for a long time, and Joey now also has a company, a medical company, a dental company called Marion Dental, where I'll be going soon. Have been there before, and so they're doing a terrific job there. I want you to check them out. They want you to know they care about you and your health and their community. Red Star Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today.